to introduce Doug Squires, who is the AUSA on this case, to answer that question.
Good morning. Carl Shye has not been arrested, but he's rather been charged in the charging document by theft, by embezzlement, by a public official. His arraignment date, the arraignment on the charging document and information, has been set before Judge Frost, the district court judge assigned to this case. And that arraignment will occur on June 21st at 10 o'clock at this courthouse.
Why hasn't he been arrested?
As a condition of this case, he has given up his certification by the state to be a state school treasurer. All the other facts underlying this charging document will be adduced, and you'll hear about them at the arraignment on the information before Judge Frost on June 21st.
There are two other men that were involved, caught up publicly with Mr. Shye. Any chance that other charges could be coming related to those guys?
We are able to say this is an ongoing investigation, and because of that, it'd be inappropriate to talk about the facts at this time.
What is the nature of the federal money? Is it Title I dollars or federal lunch money?
The information does charge that they were federal dollars tied to state of Ohio Department of Education funds to community schools, otherwise known as charter schools in this case. The information also seeks the forfeiture of over $472,000, $500,000 in this case, and that is what we seek. We will aggressively pursue that money, and that's all we're prepared to say at this time, but we'll be happy to address individual questions individually. Again, we have an ongoing investigation, and those facts and that specifically regarding bond will be addressed to Judge Frost on June 21st. Thank you.
And in terms of the question about the money, it came from the Department of Education, federal funds specifically earmarked for charter schools and community schools.
They were charter school startup grants, or?
From the general fund. I don't know. I don't have more details than that.
It was per pupil funding. Federal Federal Department of Education dollars given to the State Department of Education to specific school districts for the purpose of charter school, otherwise known as community school programs.
I'm going to try. Are you able to tell us what he did with the money?
No.
So the auditor talked about detecting a pattern of activity. Could you describe that a little more as to what it was that you saw that got this whole thing started?
Well, the start was we had all these problem audits, and his name kept coming up. But in addition to that, we started seeing some of the same kinds of problems with internal controls, some lack of particular kinds of documentation, and especially, as I mentioned earlier, cash withdrawals. Carl Shye has run amok with public dollars and the public trust, and the key is that today that run comes to an end.
Can you say where the money went? I mean, how it was used?
And our audits detail everything that we were able to find. Some of the money, because of lack of proper documentation, we'll never know how it was used. Money's fungible, and without proper audit trail, we issue a finding, but we can't tell where it went from there. I will defer to the United States Attorney on that.
No. We can't comment on this. Comment on that at this time.
For what period of time are we talking about? How many years has this gone on?
For these purposes of this charge, it's 2005 to 2011.
For the purposes of my office's work, since 2002, we've had 62 findings totaling over $1 million.
Against this particular individual? Or against schools that this individual was involved with?
Yes.
Was the Youngstown school the largest, money-wise?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have them. It's certainly a large one.
Can you provide any specifics on just details on what happened in Youngstown at the charter school there? And the audit?
I'll get a copy of the audit for you. And thank you.
What is this guy's connection to all these different schools? I mean, he's treasurer for all these different schools. I mean, is there an umbrella that ties him to all of them somehow?
It's not unusual for charter schools, which are short on resources in certain occasions, to share treasurers. To have somebody help with multiple stores, it's economics of scale. So this person, for this particular charge, we're looking at four schools.
And again, in the larger context, not specifically about this criminal case, we saw a pattern of him moving on after a school closed. Sometimes there was a change of treasurers, but actually this brings up a really good point. We introduced or worked with two legislators who have introduced a proposal in the General Assembly called the Fiscal Integrity Act. And the Fiscal Integrity Act, for the first time, would require charter school treasurers to be licensed. And if their books become unauditable, we have the ability to move against their license. If that law had been in place, it's not unreasonable to believe that or one of the other stopgap measures in that bill might have ended Mr. Shye's running amok some time ago.
Well, if he moved on from school to school, I mean, should these schools not do their due diligence in checking him out before they allowed him to have access to their funds and their books?
Well, there may be some connections. As the U.S. Attorney has said, the investigation is ongoing. My office is working with Director Nick at the Ohio Ethics Commission, and it would be inappropriate for us to discuss the future any more than that.
How many schools in total is the treasurer at? How many schools in total is the treasurer at?
13? 17, okay. That's a great question. And the vast majority of public school, charter schools have clean audits, adequate controls, adequate oversight, and the money is safe. Although this is a large set of wrongdoing by one individual, it is one individual. And this isn't any different than the township clerks that have been prosecuted under state law, or various politicians and elected office holders who have made off with public money. There will always be some degree of evil in human nature. That is not an indictment against the charter school system. It's an indictment against one individual wrongdoer. I might add that we can always get better. Charter schools are fairly new, historically kind of government entity, and we've learned over the last few years, and one of the things that we've learned, or a set of the things we've learned, are part of the reason for our proposal for the Fiscal Integrity Act, which we hope that the General Assembly is going to pass yet this year.
I'm sorry, we have time for one more question, but we are happy to answer questions individually.
What was Mr. Shye's budget salary? What was his salary supposed to be?
His salary would have depended on the individual contract with the board. I'm not sure if that's in our audit report or in our work papers, but I can have my staff dig and get that to you. But it would have been different at each one of the schools.
6 figures?
Thank you very much.